Wordvine Press presents One Way, written by Royal Banks, read for you by VonDexter Montegut II and Nekia Renee, produced by AB Book Services. How deep into the perpetual night would you go to bring back the one you love? 1. Last night, I dreamt I saw her again. It wasn't an ordinary dream. There were no faint memories upon waking up. This nightmare, felt so real that I thought I'd see her standing in front of me when I opened my eyes. Sweat drenched my already stained t-shirt, seeping into my sheets and pillowcase. I kept my eyes closed for what felt like eons, desperately hoping that when I opened them, she'd be standing there. Every night I'd come to the realization that I would never see her again. My eyes slowly opened, taking in the amber light from the street lamp outside my bedroom window. I sighed heavily, reached over to my nightstand and fumbled for my phone. The light temporarily blinded me. It was 3:28 a.m. I cleared 19 unread texts and 15 missed calls from people I couldn't bear to speak to or even see in person. I kept my phone and my life on Do Not Disturb mode. I had been fired from my job. My unemployment was going to end soon, and I didn't know how I was going to pay my mortgage. Bills were stacking up. I knew it was wrong, but what little money I had left from cashing out my 401k went to alcohol, pills, and keeping the lights on. My life was on the verge of collapse.
Jabari, it's your mother. Please call me back. I haven't heard from you in so long. Love you.
JB! What up? Just checking in on you. I know you're dealing with a lot. Just at least let me know you're alive. Love you, bruh. I haven't spoken to anyone since Eden's disappearance. The police marked me as the number one suspect, which made sense, but the accusation didn't stick. There was no motive, no murder weapon, and no body. Still, I was constantly questioned by the police, harassed by the local media, and alienated by everyone except those who loved me the most. I pushed them out of my life and became a husk of the man I once was. This was the most hopeless I had ever been. I cried out to the God I once believed in hundreds of times, pleading with him why he took the one person in my life that gave me a semblance of purpose. No answer. Sleep was my solace. Whether by pills, alcohol, or from the anchor within my mind that made me lethargic, sleep gave me the feeling of what I could pretend was peace. It was a brief respite from the terror of my reality. Sleep was the cousin of death, the closest I could get to leaving this miserable place and simply existing in a separate world. I still had the good sense to lock my shotgun away in my attic in order to keep myself from making an irreversible decision. Days became nights, nights melted into dawn, and afternoons metamorphosed into bleak, deep midnight. In that slumber, I experienced both the beauty of being reunited with her and the unbearable pain of losing her over and over again. She is a radiant, inquisitive 8-year-old in my dream, just like how she was when I last saw her. I chase after her in my backyard as she laughs and lets out high-pitched yelps of pure childlike joy, her thick locks bouncing on her shoulders, tied back with her favorite green ribbon. I never see her face. She just runs from me, her back facing me as she weaves through her swing set and playfully teases me as I clumsily try to catch her. I'll never forget Eden's eyes. They were bold, deep, dark brown pools filled with marvel and excitement. Things I lost a long time ago, when adult responsibilities reared their ugly heads. Those eyes looked up to me. But there were moments when I was too busy to give her my undivided attention. I was never a horrible father, but I wasn't always the most attentive. I brought work and stress home with me, fought with her mother, and kept my eyes glued to my phone, scrolling through meaningless status updates from friends and people I didn't even know or care for. Her eyes, those beautiful eyes, would watch me as I tended to everything but her. Since I didn't always make her feel invited, she'd leave me, go into her room, and disappear for hours, creating her own world with imaginary creatures, distant lands, and brave heroines. The dream ends the exact same way every time. Eden takes a few steps towards the woods at the edge of our backyard and stops. The light that she emits slowly fades away. I catch up to her, gasping for air, even in my dream. My joy slowly turns to anxiety as she stares towards the trees. Eden? Eden, baby, come back to me. You know I don't like when you get near those woods. Come here, please. I never liked those fucking woods. Eden would always say something was calling her from within, but I didn't believe it. Or maybe I didn't want to believe it. There was a sense of darkness emanating from the woods only 28 steps from my back porch. Even during humid summer mornings or crisp fall afternoons, the bark on every single tree seemed to stare coldly back at me. It always made me uneasy. There were stories over the years of a few people going in and never coming out, completely vanishing without a trace. It seemed like those woods drew them in and they were never seen again. But when you sign that dotted line that says, you will be the bank slave for the next 30 years and you find yourself with a $285,000 mortgage, you don't have a choice but to tolerate the creepy fucking woods at the edge of your property line. I'm just a few steps behind Eden in my dream. She continues to just stare into the woods, saying nothing. There's an iciness in her body language. My heart jumps into my throat, pulsating just behind my Adam's apple as I grab her wrist to take her back in the house. Eden, come with me. Let's go back in the house. Now. She slowly turns around. Both my head and my heart are pounding from immense anxiety and fear, the corners of my mouth white with dryness. When I see her face, I fall to my knees, trembling in inconsolable grief on the cold, hard ground. Her eyes, those beautiful brown eyes, are gone from their sockets. Every single time. I wake up screaming and crying pitifully in my dark, empty home devoid of love and warmth. My name is Jabari, and I'm an alcoholic. After 7 months of loneliness, hopelessness, and stumbling over empty bottles of Jameson, I drummed up the courage to leave the house and drag myself into a local Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. The smell of alcohol and processed food oozed through my pores as I slouched in the cold folding chair, seated in a circle among 12 other attendees. My hair, which was once cut in a low fade with a crisp lineup every week by my barber Al, was now an unkempt afro with streaks of gray. My beard was patchy and dry, and my eyes had dark circles around them from the lack of good sleep and stress. I always felt pity for the drunks that I saw in AA meetings on TV and movies. I never thought I'd suffer from the same circumstances. It took almost everything in me to admit that I, Jabari Brooks, was an alcoholic. The attendees and John, the moderator, all echoed, "Hi, Jabari." "Welcome, Jabari. Can you tell us a little more about yourself?" said John in a lively voice. "It's completely okay if you don't want to right now. You can just sit and listen to someone else share their story. Share what you feel comfortable with sharing." I froze. John looked at me warmly, his eyes almost smiling, and said, "It's okay, go ahead." The other attendees either sipped their coffee or stared down at the floor pensively. I started to talk, but I could barely string together coherent thoughts. Painful memories, coupled with my recurring nightmare, seemed to cloud my ability to speak in complete sentences. "Well, I'm Jabari. I started drinking a lot after my daughter, I took a deep, heaving breath and began to sob uncontrollably. John said some comforting words to me, something about forgiving yourself and that it was okay to express emotion, but I couldn't hear him through my loud cries. It felt like I was letting it all go, though, like a weight was being lifted off of me. For the first time in almost a year, I felt a bit of relief. I'm sorry for crying. I babbled, and wiped the tears from my eyes with a napkin covered in donut crumbs. A fellow attendee handed me a fresh napkin and a pat on the shoulder, which made me weep even more. "It's okay, Jabari. You can let your guard down around us. If you'd like to continue your story, please do. If not, that's completely okay," John stated, and leaned forward in his chair, locking his kind eyes with mine. I continued, explaining in detail the circumstances surrounding Eden's disappearance and how I began to drink and take pills as an escape mechanism. The other attendees listened to my story, some nodding their heads in understanding while others sniffled and stared into their cups of black coffee. "Yeah, thanks, John. Thank you all for listening to me. You all don't know how much that means to me." I sat in my chair and listened to some of the other attendees' stories of how they became alcoholics and how they're working to overcome it. Some of them had very depressing stories of loss and the inability to cope with their demons, so they turned to the bottle to escape hell on earth. In doing so, they created their own alternate reality where the only thing that mattered to them was getting drunk to forget the pain. I wasn't there to judge. None of us were. But there was a sense of camaraderie in being able to break down that wall that we had all built up around ourselves. There was an equal amount of support for those on their sobriety journey. We all clapped, just as enthusiastically for Janet, a middle-aged woman who had been sober for 36 hours, as we did for Kyle, a young man who had been alcohol-free for over 6 months. By the time the meeting ended, I was feeling better about myself. I made some new acquaintances, and even cracked a half smile or two while I gulped down coffee and munched on a few donuts among people who were dealing with their troubles just like me. I felt invigorated and started to think about how I could get my life back to some semblance of normality. I thanked John and told him I'd be back at next week's meeting before I walked out to my car. As I drove home, I thought about throwing away the empty bottles of alcohol in my room, hallways, bathrooms, living room, and kitchen. That poison consumed my life over the past 7 months. I can't let it kill me, I said out loud to myself as I sped down the highway at 87 miles per hour. I slowed down a bit when I noticed just how fast I was going, and blamed it on the 4 cups of coffee I'd down at the meeting. The fact that those 4 cups contained the most amount of caffeine I consumed in almost a year made me chuckle. I pulled into my driveway and noticed just how dark my house was compared to the other neighbors. My house was cold and lifeless, a foundation with just 4 walls and a roof that held a shell of a man. The other houses were homes. Light and warmth emanated from within. It was close to the holidays, so I could feel the love and togetherness of the families that occupied the homes. If it weren't for my filthy vehicle parked outside, you'd think my house was completely abandoned. When I stepped in my house, the rancid smell of rotted meat, sweat, booze, and unwashed clothes hit me all at once. I didn't realize the squalor that I created during my depression. There were half-eaten meals scattered around my living room and kitchen table. Dirty socks and underwear littered the floors. I could even hear the dry scraping of roaches skittering across the open pizza boxes on my couch. Every mirror in my house was broken either from me throwing an object at it or punching it with my bare hands. I looked at my knuckles and the scars proved that I had lost it. Wow, I muttered to myself. That was the only thing I could say about the condition that I was living in. It was time to clean it up, inside and out. I started with the living room, then eventually moved to the kitchen and dining room. The coffee gave me enough momentum to clean every corner of each room in just a few hours. At around 1:30 a.m., I trudged upstairs thinking of the stories the folks at the AA meeting told me about themselves. Then it hit me. I had to get rid of those pills and pour the leftover alcohol down the drain. I was going to quit cold turkey. I needed to. In a second burst of energy, I snatched up the half-empty bottles of Xanax on my nightstand, dashed into the bathroom, opened the pill bottles, and lifted the toilet lid. In that very moment, as I thought of how my dependency on those pills fucked my mind up, I happened to look out the window. There was a shadowy figure standing near the edge of the woods in the backyard, facing me. For a brief moment, I thought it was some annoying teenager in the neighborhood who wanted to fuck with me. Whoever or whatever it was sent chills up my spine. Although I couldn't see its face from this distance, I could tell its eyes were fixated on me. Something in me that could have been either bravery or stupidity told me to go outside and investigate the intruder in my backyard. I always stood up and screamed at my TV when I watched those movies where the idiot tries to approach the threat and ends up getting disemboweled. I couldn't believe this was actually happening to me in real life. Was I going to end up dead in my backyard, my throat slit by some serial killer? Or were withdrawals already setting in and causing me to hallucinate? I slowly turned around and walked out of the bathroom, halfway expecting whatever the hell it was to be standing only a few inches from my face. Sweat poured down my forehead and cheeks and into my beard. My breathing became labored, and I never wanted a drink as badly as I did then. I grabbed a wooden baseball bat from that closet and made my way downstairs to the back door. I was sweating so much that I didn't even think of grabbing a coat before I stepped outside. I could see steam rising from my forearms as I held my baseball bat at the ready, just in case that fucking thing moved from where I last saw it and was lurking nearby. Every step I took when I walked outside was slow and deliberate. The crunch of the dead leaves beneath my feet were the only noises besides my heavy breathing. My senses were heightened like never before. My eyes adjusted to the darkness outside. I saw the thing almost immediately. It was just standing there, right at the edge of the tree line, still boring a hole directly into my soul. I was about 20 feet away from it, slowly getting closer with my bat ready to hit a grand slam if it tried to rush towards me. "Who are you? What the fuck do you want?" I bellowed, surprising myself with the bit of courage I scraped from the deep recesses of my psyche. The figure looked to be about average height. It was enveloped in some kind of dark aura, like nothing I'd ever seen before. I kept my eyes fixated on it as I walked closer. It just stood there, unmoving. I was about 15 feet from this specter when the temperature dropped 50 degrees. The wind picked up, swirling a handful of dry leaves around my face and body. I shielded my eyes from the debris and dirt, attempting to focus on the figure that still hadn't moved. As quickly as the torrential gusts of icy wind picked up, everything froze, including the very blood that coursed through my veins. The leaves stopped in their place and time itself stood still. Seconds felt like decades as they ticked by at an excruciatingly slow pace. The being dashed towards me without touching the ground, and I wanted to flinch, but I couldn't move. It was akin to a sleep paralysis nightmare, when an inexplicably dark figure stands over you while you are completely incapacitated, trapped between a dream state and real life. It stopped within 1 inch of my face, emitting a vapor so cold I could feel ice form on my eyebrows. I felt the life within me and everything around me begin to wither away, succumbing to death itself. My eyes began to dry, and my lungs felt as though the air was being sucked out of them. The dark figure, which had no recognizable facial features, slowly opened 2 thin white slits where its eyes were supposed to be, and spoke to me without opening a mouth. "Eden lives." Three. I must have passed out from pure terror because I came to, shivering in my backyard a few hours later. The sun was beginning to crest over the horizon, but it provided no warmth to my convulsing body. As I lay there shaking, I looked over at the yellowing, frost-covered glass and wondered if I was going insane. It couldn't have been from withdrawals because I'd stopped drinking and taking pills only a few hours. What in the absolute fuck was that thing? Eden lives. I repeated those words in my mind over and over again. Eden lives. No, this can't be real, I muttered to myself, hardly able to believe what I witnessed. But what if it was real? What if my daughter is in those woods somewhere, terrified and wondering why her father hadn't come to rescue her? What if there were demons and spirits torturing her at this very second? I never fully gave up hope, but after the police searched and didn't find anything, I just closed myself off to the world and self-medicated. I continued to lay there for a few moments, my fingers painfully numb. I had to get up and get inside for warmth. I mustered as much strength as I could and shakingly stood up. My legs could barely support my weight. When I finally stood up, I saw it again, only a few feet from the edge of the woods. My daughter's favorite green bow was on the ground in front of me, covered in dried mud. I collapsed in front of it, breathing hard as I picked it up and held it tight to my chest. She had to be in there. Whatever that thing was that had said she was alive, I had to go in there myself and get her out. I stood up again, and this time my body was hot from adrenaline. My mind was racing with thoughts of my daughter huddled in that forest, crying for her father to come save her, all while I was drinking the pain away. What was it that made people go into that forest and never come out? There wasn't any time to ask questions. I had to go in there and save Eden. I always heard of something called a bug-out bag from my military and survivalist friends, but I never thought I'd need to pack one. I went in the house and packed a backpack with non-perishable snacks, a flashlight, batteries, and water. I didn't know what the hell I was going to run into in the forest, and I needed to be prepared. I remembered that I kept my shotgun locked in a box in the attic, and the key was long gone. I wasn't going to be caught without a weapon, especially if I ran into that thing again, and a baseball bat wasn't going to do shit. I went into the attic and frantically broke open the box with a crowbar that I found in my garage. I picked up the shotgun and looked it over. It needed a deep cleaning, but other than that, Old Faithful was good to go. I looked like someone from a post-apocalyptic movie with my shotgun in hand and a bug-out bag on my back. I stood at my back door for a few moments as I frantically thought of what would happen when I entered that forest. Would I immediately be killed by a monster or spirit? Regardless, I had to get Eden back. No excuses. I had to swallow all fear and enter into the unknown. I opened my back door and stepped out into the wintry afternoon. I stared into the woods just a few steps from my patio. My hands began to sweat. But I carried on and walked to the edge of the woods. This is it, I said to myself. I took a deep breath and stepped through the tree line. I halfway expected everything to go dark once I stepped into the woods, but it didn't. Nothing changed. The sky was still overcast, all the houses were still there, and no demons appeared from the shadows. I must be losing my mind, I thought nervously, and chuckled at the idea that I had been so afraid to even step into these woods for years. I walked a few more feet into the woods, my senses on high alert. Something told me to turn around. I looked over my shoulder and saw that my house, and every house in my neighborhood, was decaying at a rapid pace in a twisted real-life time lapse. The sun rose and set hundreds of times before my eyes. Weather systems came and went. I saw that the houses were eventually turned to rubble and new developments were being built all within seconds. The time lapse continued for what seemed like hundreds of years as my neighborhood became a barren field, then grew into lush forest. I tried to run back out of the woods, but an invisible force blocked me from leaving. The forest I was in slowly faded to pitch black, and I could no longer see the time lapse from the outside world. I could barely see my hands in front of me when I turned around to head deeper into the trees, unsure of what I had gotten myself into. I must have entered an entirely different dimension. Sweat poured down my face and drenched my shirt as I fumbled for my headlamp. I dropped it about 3 or 4 times before it clicked on and secured the strap around my head. The beam of white light illuminated my field of view for about 30 feet. All I could see clearly was incredibly thick brush and trees. I cursed at myself for not bringing a machete so I could hack my way through all this bullshit. The white light in the pitch black darkness messed with my eyes too. I've heard my army friends talk about using red headlamps whenever they would do training in the woods at night because their eyes would have an easier time adjusting. My first mistake was not remembering this. But when I turned the flashlight off again, all I could see was the circular white imprint the light had burned into my eyes. I blinked furiously, trying to force my eyes to adjust. I was sure I was going to make more mistakes, but hopefully none that would kill me. Luckily, I was able to lower the intensity of the light by clicking on it a few more times. After mentally kicking myself from the lighting situation, I simply stopped and listened to my surroundings. I was making a lot of noise trying to acclimate to my surroundings, and if there was something out there, it could probably hear me approaching from a mile away. I slowed my breathing, gathered my composure, and listened. It was so silent that I could hear my blood vessels pounding in my head. There was no wind to rustle the trees, no animal sounds, nothing. Pure silence is the most deafening thing one can hear. I turned my headlamp back on and began walking. I had no analog compass. My cell phone had no service, of course. The only way I was going to find Eden was to dead reckon through this forest until I came across another clue. I trudged forward through the branches and thick brush, keeping my shotgun at the ready but with my finger on the trigger guard not to accidentally cause an accidental discharge. I kept my head on a swivel, looking left and right to keep my guard up. After walking for what seemed like forever, I came to a small clearing. There was what appeared to be a large mass of leaves and sticks on the ground blocking the path in front of me. But I wasn't going to take the chance and not prepare for a possible fight. I raised my shotgun as my senses heightened and my breathing intensified. I inched towards the heap on the ground until I got close enough to see that it was indeed just a pile of leaves. I breathed a sigh of relief, but when I inhaled, I could taste the smell of rotting flesh and sulfur. I swung my shotgun to the left, my headlamp following it, and illuminated what appeared to be a massive beast about 50 feet from me. The creature had two twisted humanoid faces that were connected at the center. I trembled in wide-eyed shock as its four mucus-filled nostrils flared and two mouths twitched as thick, white foam dripped onto the leaves below. It stood up on its hind legs and let out an ear-splitting bellow, its muscles rippling beneath its glistening, impenetrable skin. It slammed down on all fours and slowly began to walk, then dashed directly towards me at blinding speed, knocking down everything in its wake. I froze for a second as I took in what the fuck was happening, then aimed my shotgun and fired a round at it. It was like shooting a bull with a spitball. The creature ran right through the buckshot, completely unfazed as it continued to scream at the top of its lungs. Fuck! Fuck! I screamed as I turned and ran as fast as I could into the clearing. My headlamp bounced and made the light sway to and fro in the utter darkness. As the thing got closer to me, I could smell its stench getting stronger as I tried to fight my way through trees and roots. I wasn't fast enough. The creature got close enough to knock me down on the ground with its scaly hand, sending my shotgun flying a few feet away from me. When I turned to look at what was possibly going to eat me alive, only an hour or so into my suicide mission, I saw the thin membrane of skin between its faces develop thousands of tiny holes that bubbled with pus and slowly grew larger until it completely split open. Foul fluids dripped onto my face and chest and revealed thousands of jagged, razor-sharp teeth. The putrid smell made me gag uncontrollably, causing me to throw up in my mouth. I let out a gurgling scream as it crouched in front of me, bringing its split-open faces directly in front of my own. In that very moment, I saw the souls of the people it had killed in its mouth. There were men, women, and even children crying and begging to be freed, pleading with whatever God they still believed in to end the infinite imprisonment. I closed my eyes and prepared to accept death for the very first time in my life. Suddenly, something knocked the creature off me, sending it flying into a nearby tree. The force was strong enough to shatter the thick trunk into 1,000 pieces. I scrambled over to my shotgun and sprinted as fast as I could to another tree, turning my light off and letting myself sink into darkness. The creature was fighting something, but I couldn't see it. Not only because it was dark, but because whatever it was seemed to be invisible. I didn't want to stick around to see what would happen if either of them won. So I turned my headlamp on low and ran along a narrow path lined with roots and branches until their screams and thuds became distant noises. Exhausted, I trudged off of the path deeper into the woods and slumped near a massive tree that looked similar to a redwood. I turned my light and tried to sleep, but every few moments my eyes would shoot open in a panic. I expected some other hellspawn to come rip me to shreds at any moment. Eventually, sleep took hold of me, and I passed out in a cold sweat, cradling my shotgun. 4. I woke up after what felt like a few seconds, but was probably only an hour or two. The forest seemed to be enveloped in a thick, deep orange color smog, almost like the aftermath of a massive fire. There was no sun to be seen, no wind, and no birds or animal noises. Just an eerie silence as I breathed steadily and gathered myself, halfway expecting to be attacked at any time. Fuck. What the hell happened? There's no way any of this could be real, I muttered quietly to myself. I took my headlamp off and put it inside my backpack. Catching sights of the snacks inside, I realized I hadn't eaten since I came into the forest. Hunger was the last thing on my mind. I needed to find Eden and figure out how to get us the hell out of here. Get up, a growling voice said to me, seemingly out of nowhere. I said, get the fuck up. Now! In my stupor, I didn't realize that someone was slowly approaching me from a few feet away. It was more than a little unsettling to go from waking up 30 seconds ago to having a high-powered rifle pointed in my face. I halfway expected to be blown away, with my brains and skull fragments splattered on the tree behind me. But whoever this guy was didn't want to kill me just yet. Who are you? I asked in a sleep-depraved daze. If I have to ask you, he said between his teeth as he took his weapon off safety. One more time, to get the fuck up, I swear I will blow your motherfucking head off. Get up! He bent down and snatched my shotgun away from me. I didn't possess enough energy to even think about resisting. Judging from his commanding tone of voice, this guy wasn't messing around. I stood up wearily, and he gave me a glance over, looking me up and down with an expression of both frustration and pity. He was a tall man, standing about 6'1", and looked to be in his late 30s. His face, however, was weathered and home to a few scars, some newer than others. He wore a tattered black t-shirt, a pair of black 5'11" pants, and a pair of scuffed black boots, a sign that he probably worked in security or was a police officer at some point in time. He snarled at me, speaking more with his gun than his mouth. Who are you? What's your name? And what are you here for? Do you have any idea what you've gotten yourself into? My name is Jabari. After last night, I've no fucking idea what I've gotten myself into, I said sarcastically. I'm looking for my daughter, Eden. Could you please get that damn gun out of my face? I'm not trying to be the first statistic in another dimension, know what I mean? The man became motionless, then slowly lowered his rifle, his eyes fixated on mine. Eden? Yeah. Do you know where my daughter is? My mind began to race with the idea that I just might be reunited with her again. Then how would I get out of here once I found her? Yes. Yes, I do. We all do. We? I said, confused. We're not the only humans in here? No. There's a few others. Some aren't so human anymore. The man extended his calloused hand as a show of peace. Sean. Sorry about scaring you, man. Assume everything is a threat in here and you'll live longer than 24 hours. I shook his hand firmly and looked him in his eyes. I didn't know if I could trust this guy completely yet. Hell, I didn't know if he was even real. I was so sleep-deprived and traumatized that this could all be a grieving man's feverish dream. Lead the way, Sean. We walked together for a few minutes without saying a word to each other. Sean broke the silence first, startling me a bit as we walked through the thick brush. I was a cop for the city when all this shit happened. We were briefed that a little girl had gone missing in these woods and that we needed to go search for the body. My partner and I came in here to search. But when we turned around, we just saw the whole world go by. It was almost like a time lapse, I added stoically. Sean nodded. It was insane. We couldn't get out no matter how hard we tried. We radioed our sergeant, but we couldn't get a signal out. Then it got dark. Pitch black. He trailed off as we walked to a safe haven, a location that only he knew of. I didn't try to pry information out of him because I was sure this experience was just as harrowing for him as it was for me. Who were the other humans in this place? What did he mean by not so human anymore? What about Eden? Was she still the same little girl, or had this forest changed her for the worse? If you don't do your best to calm your mind, you might have a mental breakdown, Try to stay strong, I thought as I stepped over fallen branches and piles of dead leaves. I looked up at the trees and saw that they never swayed. There was no breeze in this forest, just blood-orange day and the darkest of nights. Sean surprised me when he broke the silence again. I've got a hideout that I stay at not too far from here. I don't really let anyone or anything in. There's some real scary shit out here, man. Shit that you'd only see in horror movies. I nodded silently as we continued to walk. Sean came to a halt and told me that we had arrived. I didn't see anything at all, just trees and dead leaves on the forest floor. Look down, Sean said, and bent down to the ground. He slid a piece of scrap wood covered in leaves and twigs to the side. There was a hole in the ground that revealed a set of steps dug into the earth leading into a dark tunnel. This must have been how he kept safe from whatever lurked around this forest at night. Hurry up. Go in first and I'll cover us, Sean whispered hurriedly. I walked down the steps and further into the extremely narrow tunnel. My shoulders almost hugged the walls as Sean flicked open a lighter and handed it to me. I carefully walked until I came into a small carved-out room with a pallet for sleeping and some of Sean's belongings. It reminded me of the documentaries I'd watched about the Taliban and how they lived in and fought out of caves dug in the mountains. This is it. This is my home now. Sean sighed as he sat down on his makeshift pallet made from old clothes. It's not much, but it's kept me safe ever since I found it. I had to clear out a couple freaks in here, but it was worth it. Shit, man, I said, taking in my surroundings as Sean took the lighter from me and lit a candle. The flame produced a light that made our shadows dance on the walls. The den was probably no bigger than a prison cell. I was 5'8" and my head nearly scraped the ceiling. So Sean had to bend down to even enter the place. So what is this place? Are we in some different dimension or something? I asked Sean impatiently. Where's my daughter? He looked at me intensely for a second, then relaxed his gaze. He ran his hands over his buzz cut and exhaled deeply. We're in an alternate dimension from what I know, Jabari. Time seems to go by normally in here, but I doubt it matches the time on the outside. He jumped up and opened a notebook filled with scribbled notes. What day did you walk into the forest? December 4th, Friday. It was last night, I guess, and my daughter went missing on May 10th, I said, watching for his reaction. Shit, I figured. Sean showed me his book with tally marks and dates. According to him, only about 33 days had passed in the forest, when in reality it had been almost 7 months on the outside. This forest is fucking endless, man. I've walked it for hours, sometimes even days, but I always end up back at this one specific opening. It's the same shit every time. Every single goddamn day. I've been on the verge of losing it, you know. Sean, I don't mean to be rude, but I gotta cut to the chase. Where's my daughter? You said you knew where she is. Take me to her. Sean looked away from me hesitantly, pulled a compass out of his backpack, and handed it to me. It was covered in dirt and had seen better days, but it seemed operable. It's best if you go by yourself. Nightfall will be here soon. When it comes, head east. But you should rest first. Here, take this. Sean handed me a Vietnam-era flashlight with a red lens. Better on your eyes. 5. I felt it was time to head up top to look for Eden after a few hours of rest. Sean was sleeping lightly with his gun by his side, and he stirred as I got up and headed back into the tunnel up the stairs. I stood at the top of the stairs and listened for any movement. Once I confirmed nothing was lurking around outside, I removed the cover and stepped outside, my shotgun at the ready just in case. I flicked the flashlight on and my eyes immediately thanked me. It wasn't nearly as bright as the stark white light. When I turned it off to test it, my eyes adjusted much quicker. I pulled out the compass and watched as the needle slowly turned from northeast to the east. Odd, I thought. Compasses don't automatically point to a certain direction. As I walked deeper into the night in search of my daughter, I thought of all the heartache and pain I went through during her disappearance. Her mother Nuri and I were already on the verge of separation. The situation, combined with my outright refusal to seek therapy for my growing depression, or even attend one session of couples therapy, led to divorce. Crushed by Eden's disappearance and the split with Nuri, I turned to pills and alcohol to fight my demons. They only made things worse. I moved at a slow, deliberate pace, careful not to make too much noise. I was terrified at the thought of some heart-stopping, horrifying freak, as Sean called them, ambushing me from the darkness. But to my surprise, nothing came. I walked until I felt like I lost sense of direction, forcing me to look down at my compass every few minutes to ensure I was still going in the right direction. I started to lose hope that I'd ever see my daughter again. Was Sean trying to set me up to have me killed by whatever lurked in these godforsaken woods? I couldn't fully trust that guy just yet. My mind raced with a flurry of violent thoughts. Seemingly out of nowhere, I heard a voice whispering through the trees that sounded pleasant but commanding. It was neither a man's voice nor a woman's, yet it carried the essence of both, the divine feminine and masculine that I'd read about in spiritual books. I felt a sense of maternal love, while also experiencing a heightened awareness of the things that I could feel but not see. I immediately stopped in my tracks and buckled to my knees, tears streaming down my face in awe of the unseen, omnipotent power speaking directly to me.
You are the one who seeks what he has lost,
the voice affirmed in a whispered, sonorous tone that resounded through the forest. Yes, I'm looking for my daughter, Eden, I said, my voice trembling with fear and amazement of the unknown omnipotent being that was speaking both directly to and through me.
We are the one who will conduct you to see her. Rise, Jabari. Follow the path that is illuminated at your feet.
A beam of soft white light snaked its way in front of me on the forest floor. Its illumination slowly revealed humanoid figures on either side whose bodies reflected their surroundings. They looked almost like mirrors. They had no faces, no clothing, no hints of gender or race. It was unlike anything I had experienced before. They were silent, but I felt comforted by their very presence as I walked between them. Maybe one of these beings saved me from that freak that tried to kill me when I first got in here, I contemplated as I continued to follow the path of light in front of me. The soft glow grew in intensity as I approached a wall of thick, ancient trees and vines that slowly opened to reveal a small oasis. A shimmering pool of bioluminescent blue water bounced light onto the surrounding vegetation. Small, luminous insects of all colors wafted above the pool, casting their reflections on the surface of the water. I silently marveled at the first sense of pure tranquility and peace I felt in what seemed like years. That was when I saw her. Eden stood in waist-deep water with her back facing me, wearing a beautiful, flowing white dress. She was surrounded by a soft, golden aura that reflected upon the pool of water. Her locks had grown longer and reached halfway down her back and were adorned with golden jewelry at the tips. She had grown older within this dimension and was no longer the inquisitive child I last saw before she disappeared into the forest. She was taller, more mature, and more elegant. Her skin was radiant, and something about her resonated a true connection to a higher spiritual consciousness. Her very being reflected peace and tranquility.
It's good to see you again, Father,
she said, slowly turning towards me. Her eyes, those same beautiful eyes, briefly glowed a vivid green as she effortlessly floated towards me in the water with her arms stretched in my direction. I dashed towards her, not minding the cool water as I waded into the pool. I started crying profusely and shouting her name. Eden! Eden! Oh my God, my baby! My baby! We embraced for what seemed like an eternity, holding each other tight as tears flowed down my cheeks. I stepped back from her, and the motions created small waves in the pool. The glowing insects were disturbed and flew erratically around us. What happened to you, Eden?
I am what I was destined to become,
she asserted, smiling softly as she held my hands.
Father, we have so much to discuss. In due time, you'll know everything you need to know.
We stepped out of the pool and further into the lush grove filled with plants and floating insects that resembled small orbs of light. It was still dark, but Eden's aura emanated a light that illuminated everything around us as we walked.
This is a sacred place,
Eden said softly.
a place where you can be safe from evil.
How did you find this place? I asked.
I created it.
She said matter-of-factly as she turned towards me and smiled. Eden paused, and as she raised her hands, vines slowly sprouted from the ground and produced fresh bunches of grapes. Suddenly, I realized that I was famished. I hadn't eaten since I came into the forest. I picked one grape off a bunch and ate it. It was the most delectable fruit I had ever eaten. Oh my God, I exhaled as I munched on the grape. So my daughter, my sweet girl, I motioned helplessly at a loss of what word to use.
A goddess of creation, at least in this dimension.
How did that even happen?
On the outside, in my previous form, I always heard a genderless voice calling me from within the forest. That voice reverberated within my spirit. It never scared me. It was more intriguing than anything. However, you always told me never to go into the forest because you had a bad feeling about it. In a way, you were right, but for me, it was my destiny.
Eden paused as we walked on the path, clearing low-hanging vines with just a wave of her hand.
I knew that it would hurt you deeply when I went into the forest, but I felt compelled to do so. When I walked in, I turned around and saw the whole world passing by. I was terrified, but I continued to travel through the forest to where the voices called me. It was so dark, so terrifying. There were beasts lurking in the woods that tried to kill me, but every time they got close, something that I couldn't see would fight them off.
The mirror people, I said, interrupting Eden.
Yes, the One, as they call themselves.
What are they? One of them saved my life when I was about to be eaten alive by this two-headed creature. Eden paused to gather her thoughts.
The One are celestial beings that exist both in this dimension and in the earthly plane. Their image cannot be perceived by the naked human eye, so they appear to mirror their surroundings. They are connected by a single consciousness and are both multiple beings and one being simultaneously.
Eden lifted her index finger and allowed a glowing insect to land on it, observing it with keen interest before letting it float away into the trees.
They saved me. I was right the entire time. They were the voice that I heard on the other side. The One led me through rigorous spiritual and mental training, and I became the woman you see in front of you, a goddess of creation momentarily trapped in this plane of existence.
Trapped? But you told me you created this oasis. Can't you just make a way to get us out of here?
I possess the capability to open a portal to the other side for a very small window of time. Only one person will be able to leave through it. Once it closes, whoever is left inside will remain trapped forever in this dimension.
What? I exclaimed at this revelation. My heart skipped a beat at the thought of being in this perpetual night for eternity. How come the One can't help you? They seem like they have enough power to keep the portal open so everyone can make it out.
No,
she said.
They will not assist. It is not their purpose.
So that makes it myself, you, and this other guy I met.
A man named Sean.
Right, yeah.
There is another,
Eden said, her voice dropping to barely a whisper. Who could that be? I haven't come across this other person yet.
One who is the antithesis of myself. A god of destruction within this dimension that calls itself Nihil.
Nihil? Like nihilism? I asked, my curiosity piquing.
Yes. He is the one who believes that life is meaningless and it must be destroyed. If I open the portal and he is able to leave this place, he will annihilate all life on the earthly plane.
In just what felt like a day, but could have been much longer on the outside, I'd been attacked by a monster, found out that my daughter had grown up and become a goddess of creation, and now there's some other entity that believes life is meaningless and wants to destroy the planet on the outside? What the fuck did I get myself into? So how do I stop this god of destruction? I asked, trying to get to the point.
You would not be able to by yourself,
Eden stated, looking directly at me.
No physical object or human can harm him.
A deafening sound thundered around us, shaking the oasis and causing the insects to buzz erratically, their lights flickering on and off. Eden's eyes glowed an intense green as she screamed at me to get behind her, raising her hands as the aura of light around her became blindingly bright. I heard the same bone-chilling bellow from the first night, causing all the hairs on the back of my neck to stand up. The thought of a two-headed monster bursting in here scared the shit out of me, but I readied my shotgun just in case. Then, I heard another gut-wrenching screech, then another, and countless more after that. There were a horde of monsters just outside the oasis. Suddenly, the trees and vines burst into flames, producing an intense, unbearable heat. Eden created an energy dome to protect us from the fire and smoke. Hundreds of shadowy figures similar to the specter I saw outside my house rushed into the oasis as the one multiplied and fought them off with beams of pure energy.
Stay in this shield! Do not leave it!
Eden screamed as she left the dome to fight off the intruders. She shot into the air, telekinetically lifted a group of monsters and specters and reduced them to ash and bones with blasts of otherworldly energy powerful enough to tear a hole into the side of a building. The oasis exploded into a spectacle of color, light, and flames as the battle raged on between good and evil. The monsters produced guttural screams as they were viciously torn to pieces by the one, their black blood immediately vaporizing in the flames. Within seconds, everything stopped. The monsters and specters ceased their attack and simultaneously ran out of the oasis into the forest. Eden remained airborne, breathing heavily as the flames crackled and vines snapped from the heat.
He's coming. I can feel his presence,
she said. Both the energy dome around me and Eden's aura began to fade as she slowly descended. A hooded figure stepped directly through the flames, unharmed only a few feet away from us. It was Nile.
I see. I've come across a beautiful moment. A daughter reuniting with her father.
Nile mocked, his sneer revealing a set of pointed teeth. He removed his hood to show a strikingly powerful face, covered in scars that glowed blood red.
My presence causes you to grow weaker by the second, Eden. Your oasis is no longer a safe haven.
He snarled as he continued to walk toward us, smiling at Eden's weakening state. He possessed the commanding stature of an ancient African general as he glared at me and Eden with dark, empty eyes devoid of love and warmth. Thick, free-form locks grew wildly from his head in all directions, much different from Eden's flowing hair, which cascaded down her back and stopped just short of her waist.
No matter,
he boomed, balling his fists and producing shapeless forms of dark energy from both hands.
I'm going to kill your daughter right in front of you, then have my sentinels feast upon her festering corpse as you watch.
Nile hurled a blast of dark energy directly toward us. Right before impact, Eden gathered the last of her strength and shot a beam of light directly into the dark energy, causing them to crash into each other in a blistering, ear-shattering mess of vibration and heat. Two giant orbs of darkness and light began rotating around each other, humming slowly at first, then faster as both Eden and Nile held their ground.
Run, father! You must leave now!
Eden screamed. I ran deeper into the forest, looking over my shoulder as the two orbs continued to spin around each other at hundreds, then thousands of times per second. I could no longer see Eden or Nile. The spinning spheres produced blinding flashes of stark white light that danced off every tree in the woods. I tried to shield my eyes from the solar flare that was so bright it was like staring directly into the sun. The energy was so intense that my retinas burned in excruciating pain and I was blinded. White, hot tears streamed down my cheeks. Within milliseconds, I felt the ripple of a massive implosion that pulled me and everything else into its center.
Seconds prior, there had been everything. Now, there was nothing. No color, no darkness, no light, no sound, no heat, no cold. Yet from nothing, I create.
Wordvine Press presents One Way, written by Royal Banks, read for you by VonDexter Montegut II and Nekia Renee, produced by AB Book Services. We hope you've enjoyed this unabridged production of One Way, Book 1 by Royal Banks. Visit wordvinepress.com for more information and bonus content. This has been a Wordvine Press presentation. All rights reserved, 2020. The end.